Welcome into Fantasy Baseball today on Thursday, September 5th. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Scott White and Chris Towers. Today on the show, the Cubs threw a combined no-hitter led by Shota Imanaga. Corey Seager was placed in the IL, so we do need replacements there. Clay Holmes is out as closer. Thank you. Also, for now. And much more. Let's jump in.
Holy cow! How about that?
All right, I'm going to let Chris decide where we start. Chris, put your producer hat on. I wanted to start with Shota Imanaga. Scott wanted to start with Spencer Arrighetti. I'll let you decide.
Well, I think we should cut the baby in half and see which parent it goes to, right? That's how we solve these things. Let's be positive. Let's celebrate an accomplishment.
All right, let's do exactly that. The Cubs threw a combined no-hitter led by Shota Imanaga. He was followed up by Nate Pearson and Porter Hodge. Imanaga threw 7 no-hit innings with 2 walks and 7 strikeouts. He had 20 whiffs on 95 pitches. Splitter was fantastic. 10 of his 20 whiffs came on that splitter. He got up to 95 pitches. His season high is 103. Maybe they could have pushed him a little bit more, but I do understand why, they didn't want to go too far with Shota Imanaga. They're trying to protect their investment, I guess, a little bit more long-term here. But great outing for him, no doubt. He's turned in 3 straight quality starts. And all of a sudden, in the second half, Imanaga's numbers, 3.04 ERA, a .85 whip. That's pretty tremendous stuff there. Anything else to add? I mean, it's not really the most fantasy relevant thing, but, it's a pretty big baseball story.
I will say, before the show, Scott, you were kind of poo-pooing the idea of celebrating the accomplishment of a combined no-hitter. But, a no-hitter is inherently a team accomplishment. Unless you strike out 27 in a row, you needed the guys in blue pinstripes to help you out behind you. And so I have no problem celebrating the accomplishments of the Chicago Cubs. Look, it's not like, we had another pitcher go 6 no-hit innings in this slate as well, right? Zac Gallen?
Yep.
Yes.
And that was another one where that one was more like, it was a good result, but I don't know if it's all systems go for Zac Gallen moving forward. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But, with Imanaga, I think the takeaway is he's just really good. But we've known that, basically since the word go on his season. Even in spring training, he looked awesome. So, it's proven sustainable. We had some concerns about how Imanaga would hold up as the weather warmed up and offense took off. And look, the weather warmed up, offense took off. And he's sitting here September 5th with a 2.99 ERA for the season. So, it's not like the most impactful performance in terms of fantasy, but it's worth highlighting.
Yeah.
That's all.
There have been some bumps in the road, no doubt. There have been some home runs allowed by Imanaga. I think a 9 or 10 earned run start up against the Mets. And even with that, the ERA stands at 2.99. I think we pretty much said everything, but Scott, anything to add here? Cubs no.
5 of his last 9 starts, Imanaga has gone more than 6 innings. Not 6 innings or more than 6 innings in more than half of his last 9 starts. So that's not something I expected. And hopefully it continues.
The Cubs also won this game 12-zip, so some big offensive games. Did want to highlight Dansby Swanson, who continues to rake 3 for 5 with his 14th home run and 3 RBI. Last 48 games for Swanson, he's batting over 300. He's got 6 homers. Counting stats have been great, 10 steals, and an OPS over 800 during that span. And Pete Crow Armstrong also continues to hit well, 3 for 4 with his 8th home run, 3 RBI. And since July 3rd, that's nearly 50 games worth of action, 280 batting average, 7 homers, 11 steals, also an OPS over 800, PCA up to 60% rostered. And I believe both of you guys still have him ranked behind Butler and Cruz, right? Does that make sense? Crow Armstrong?
Yeah. I have him behind both of those guys, but that doesn't mean I don't like Pete Crow Armstrong. I think he's he was a 20-40 kind of guy in the minors, and there were a lot of questions about whether he would actually be that good of a hitter. But what we're seeing lately is maybe it's transferable. He's hitting the ball a lot better. He's producing more power, and I'm pretty happy with what we're seeing from PCL.
I was trying to remember. I was like, O'Neal Cruz? Who's he talking about? And I was typing in CRUZ, but you meant multiple Cruz.
Oh,
like
Dylan
on a
Cruz. Okay.
Yes.
I thought you meant
Yeah.
O'Neal Cruz as well. He is outfield eligible now.
I wanted to say, with regard to Pete Crow Armstrong and Dansby Swanson, those two in particular, I wrote an article. I was out on the site yesterday. 20 hitter and pitcher pickups for the stretch run. Looked at every team's matchups for the final 3 weeks, and the Cubs have the best hitter matchups for the final 3 weeks. So Crow Armstrong and Swanson were numbers 1 and 2 on that list. If they happen to be available in your league, or if you already have them, I think you should hold on to them.
All right. Now, Scott, we will go over to you, your player of the night. We've talked a lot about Spencer Arrighetti recently, but not for this reason.
No, he was terrible. It was a disaster. It was one of the worst starts of the year, probably for anybody. Allowed 9 earned runs in 2/3 of an inning. After, I think rightfully, we were on board with him as basically a must-start pitcher moving forward. I mean, he just had a dominant outing against the Phillies, of all teams. And double-digit strikeout outings left and right. And, he may still be good. I think he probably is still good. I think it was just one of those days. But he wasn't good today, and he let a lot of people down. Now, I do reserve some hope that it ends up being 3 earned runs instead of 9, because he had 2 outs and the bases loaded in the first inning. And a fairly routine grounder was hit to Jeremy Pena that he tried to field it from the side instead of getting in front of it. And it was ruled a bases clearing double instead of what should have been the 3rd out of the inning. So there was what looked like an 11 earned run outing for George Kirby earlier, just a few weeks ago. And it ended up being a 6 earned run outing instead of 11 because a hit was changed to an error after the fact. So I'm hoping that ends up happening here with Arrighetti and saving a lot of people a lot of pain, but I can't guarantee it's going to happen.
Yeah. And if I wanted to give myself, and I think all of us, a little bit of credit, we were very excited about Spencer Arrighetti after his recent run. What was 3 starts with double-digit strikeouts out of 5 in the month of August. He was incredible. And ironically, the one bad start he had in that stretch was against the White Sox. But, I was looking at what I wrote after Arrighetti's last start, and, the headline of the FBT newsletter that day, it's time to add Spencer Arrighetti everywhere. But I did say, I still think there's quite a wide range of possible outcomes for Arrighetti. I think we all kind of had that same sense about him, it was really good, but we've seen really, really low lows from Arrighetti as well this season. But I actually don't feel like I deserve the absolution of that, because I was very excited about Spencer Arrighetti. And if I had him, I think I only have him in my 1 AL only league, but I definitely started him there. And if I had him in any of my other leagues, I absolutely would have started him in this one. I was not expecting anything like this. And so, yeah, it stinks. Given the timing, absolutely one of the worst starts of the season. It doesn't really, I don't think, change how you should view Spencer Arrighetti. Now, there's a decent chance that if you had Spencer Arrighetti in your lineup and it doesn't get changed to an error, it might not matter. Your season might be over.
In head-to-head leagues, negative 21 fantasy points on CBS.
That's pretty bad.
It's pretty bad. You could win. You could still win.
But it's pretty hard to go from, expecting 15 to 20 points and actually getting negative
it's not
21.
Good. It's not good. I'm just saying it feels like a bigger disaster.
Yeah.
Well, we talk about it all the time. It's why we have a a higher threshold to meet for 2-start streamers in Roto than points leagues, because the damage in Roto leagues from a bad start is always worse.
But I say all that just to say that, like, the thought process behind Spencer Arrighetti isn't really that much different after this start, even though it was a terrible, terrible start.
Now, if he has another start like this, I might say otherwise. But yeah, overall, I'm still pretty excited about Arrighetti, his upside, the direction his career is headed. It's so much better than I ever would have imagined when he was first breaking into the majors. But yeah, this was a bad one, and hopefully he learns from it, which is basically what he said after the game.
Yeah, look, the previous 9 starts before this one for Arrighetti, ace-like production, 2.77 ERA, 103 WHIP, 11.6 K per 9, 14.5% swinging strike rate. So it's unfortunate. There's no doubt about it. But like the way he was pitching, I can't blame anybody for having him in their lineups. He was 63% started on CBS, so a good amount of people did have him. I have a segment for later on, start, sit, or drop. This is looking ahead to next week. What do you guys think for Spencer Arrighetti? He lines up to face the Oakland A's next week.
I'm going to lean towards start. I won't as reflexively as I did for this past turn, but that's a pretty vulnerable lineup. Who was it today who just had a nice bounce back start against the A's? George Kirby. George Kirby, who had been struggling for a while, was great against them. So I'm going to lean towards start still.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I understand if you don't want to, but I think I would.
All right, Chris, over to you for your player of the night.
MacKenzie Gore, who has looked significantly better over the past couple of starts. He had a perfect game into the 6th inning, gave up 1 earned run, 1 hit, 6 innings, 9 strikeouts against the Marlins today. Velocity on that 4-seam fastball still up 96.2 miles per hour. That's right at the season average. But if you remember, when things were going very poorly for MacKenzie Gore, the velocity had really trailed off, and that's been back over the past 3 starts. And wouldn't you know it, he's had 3 really good starts, 3 quality starts in a row. And the Nationals did talk around mid-August about there being some mechanical issues that MacKenzie Gore was working through. He has a pretty complicated delivery. It kind of has always reminded me of Clayton Kershaw a little bit. That's probably the best comp. And that's one of those ones where, like, Clayton Kershaw is kind of the only guy who throws like that besides MacKenzie Gore. And there's probably a reason for it. It's a tough delivery to repeat. But the fact that he has bounced back with 3 quality starts in a row, looks like 19 strikeouts over 18 innings in that stretch, only 4 earned runs allowed.
Only 2 walks in those 3 starts. That might be the most encouraging thing of all.
I think I understand, again, being skeptical about MacKenzie Gore, given how inconsistent his career has been and this season has been. But when he's been on, he's been phenomenal this season. He's been really, really good. Remember, we were talking about him as one of the biggest breakouts through the first couple of months of the season before things fell apart. And I think I would rather have Arrighetti the rest of the way, but I think he's in that conversation.
You know, Gore mentioned after his previous start, well, this is exactly what he said. It's a long season and you go through periods of time where you just don't feel as good. And he credited the Nationals medical staff. So he may have been going through something physically that was impacting his complicated delivery, that was leading to the familiar control problems, and that made him useless in fantasy. And then hopefully
he is a 2-star pitcher next week.
Yeah.
It looks like that for now. I do realize we spoke a lot about matchups for next week. I mean, this time of year, so many things can change. So I guess take what we're saying with a grain of salt. Obviously, we'll just provide some context based on, what it says on the site as of now. But obviously, things are ever changing this time of year. So keep that in mind when looking at the matchups. Just want to put MacKenzie Gore up against some of the waiver wire pitchers we spoke about yesterday. Would you guys take Gore over Jeffrey Springs?
I'll stick with Springs.
I think in a head-to-head points league, I would have Gore ranked ahead.
What about Gore versus David Peterson? 11 strikeouts yesterday.
I
Gore
think
fairly
Gore.
easily.
I
Gore
think
fairly
Gore.
easily.
Yeah.
Okay. What about Gore versus Ryan Nelson?
That one's a little closer. It might just come down to the matchups. I do not remember what Nelson's project. I think he was projected as a 2-star pitcher next week.
I think he's projected for 1 at the Brewers.
Okay, yeah, I would go.
I think the 2 starts were this week.
Yeah, Gore's got the Braves and Marlins next week at home, so I would go with Gore.
Yeah, that's fair.
What about Gore versus David Festa?
Gore.
Definitely Gore.
And Gore versus maybe his American League counterpart, Spider-Man meme, Reed Detmers.
Gore's had 3 good starts in a row. Detmers has had 1, so I will go with Gore.
Unless you count the 3 in the minors, which
Yeah, no,
you probably shouldn't, but
we talked about it. Yeah, I think there are reasons to be optimistic about Reed Detmers, but
yeah,
the history of Reed Detmers has been reasons to be optimistic, followed by disaster,
Well,
which
history for Gore too.
Yeah, it's also.
Yeah, very
but let me just check real quick here because I had Detmers on that list of players to pick up for the final 3 weeks.
It looks like he gets the Astros for 1
Yeah,
next week.
yeah, it's more the final 2 weeks that are in Detmers' favor. So with Gore having the better matchups for next week, we'll give him the edge for now.
All right, before we hit the break, big thanks to everyone for hanging out, watching live. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe on YouTube if you haven't already. That's youtube.com/fantasybaseball today. We're going to be here all throughout September, 5 times per week. Nothing's changing, at least in terms of our programming schedule. And if you enjoy the pod and you listen on the audio side, feel free to drop a 5-star rating and review on both Apple and Spotify. It helps us out a bunch, and we really do appreciate it. Let's take our first break, and when we return, we'll hit the news and notes. Corey Seager, Clay Holmes, lots to talk about. We'll do that right after this.
It's a Service Academy triple header on CBS Sports Network.
Welcome back in news and notes. And I think Bruce Bochy's comments about load management for Corey Seager makes a little bit more sense now that he was placed on the IL with hip discomfort. So we are looking for replacements. Obviously, Corey Seager is universally ranked as a top 6 or 8 shortstop in our ranking. So it's a pretty big loss. 2 names to check for in the shallowest of leagues. We mentioned Dansby Swanson, who's 80% rostered on CBS. The other name is Xavier Edwards, who was activated off the IL, and he's 78% rostered. So some people dropped him, maybe prematurely, and he could be out there.
I did not realize that many people had dropped him.
Yep. Who would you guys rather have just in a vacuum, Swanson or Edwards?
Edwards.
Yeah, I mean, I love Swanson for the last 3 weeks, like I said, and he's been great since August 1st. Top 5 shortstop in points league since August 1st. But Edwards.
Yeah. 2 names who are available in a few more leagues. Mason Wynn is at 72% rostered. Tommy Edman at 57%.
Both of those were on the list for the final 3 weeks. Look at that.
Look at that.
Synergy.
Swanson, let's just say Swanson and Edwards are already rostered. Who would you prefer between Wynn and Tommy Edman?
Win.
Okay. If you need a middle infielder, so getting a little bit further down the list now, Brooks Lee, 31%, Geraldo Perdomo, 30%, Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, 29%, and Paul DeJong is 27%.
The only one of those that I considered for these pickups for the final 3 weeks was Brooks Lee, though obviously no idea what to actually expect from him.
I will just say, Paul DeJong continues to hit. It's weird. I don't quite understand it. He has an 830 OPS since getting to the Royals. He's not, I don't think, playing quite every day, but
it's pretty much all home runs, right? The batting average isn't good.
But he has remained productive, I think, rather shockingly all season. And there is a non-zero chance we get a 30-homer Paul DeJong season.
Wow. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11, 12. He has started 11 of the past 12 games for the Royals. So he's playing quite a bit. Yeah.
The batting average is actually better than it was with the White Sox.
Yeah,
He's
he's got a 40% strikeout rate with the Royals. So it's not all good news. But
of these deep league options, he's probably the one that's going to give you the closest skill set to Seager, right? If you're just looking for power, it's Paul DeYoung. Look, I understand.
If you're just looking for power, I would agree with the if you're just looking to replace Kyle Seager's power.
What do you think Seager is?
Because like I do want to just take a moment, because if this is Corey Seager, the end of Corey Seager's season, the overall numbers are a little underwhelming. He ends up with an 864 OPS. He's been Corey Seager basically since the start of May. It was a bad first month and like 5 games. His OPS fell to 594 on May 5th. Since then, 963 OPS with a 50 homer pace for Corey Seager. So it's a huge loss. One that I don't think Paul DeYoung will overcome.
And then 2 names in the deepest of leagues, 15-team Roto, AL, NL only, Jose Tena and Otto Lopez. If you just need a shortstop that's playing, those are a few options for you.
I like Tena probably better than some of the guys we mentioned.
I like him more than IKF, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Joe Espada told reporters that it's unlikely Kyle Tucker will be activated before Thursday's game against the Reds. Tucker is basically day-to-day at this point, could be activated at any point. We don't really know.
I assume you guys talked about this on Monday, right? What we said actually was true. What everybody said ended up being true.
It's just frustrating that they have to be transparent about injuries like this?
I don't know. Like, I don't know what MLB's injury reporting rules actually are.
Maybe I'm just thinking of the NFL.
Yeah, the NFL and NBA have more stringent protocols. I don't know, but it also took The Athletic getting an internal source to report it before they finally confirmed it as well. So yeah, it's annoying and frustrating that what we all knew was the case. Bryce
Harper left after getting hit by a pitch on his left elbow. And after the game, Harper said that he did feel better after getting some treatment. Hopes to not miss any games here. Again, that's Bryce Harper. Yoshinobu Yamamoto will return Tuesday against the Cubs. He only built up to 53 pitches in his last rehab start. So that feels like a sit his first time back, right?
I'd try to avoid it, sure.
Yeah.
Maybe not in deeper roto leagues because I think the percentages will be good. But hopefully just that one is all you sit him for, and then he's good to go after that.
All right, there it is. Finally, Aaron Boone has pulled the plug on Clay Holmes, said they're going to get creative with the closer role going forward. He also mentioned that Clay Holmes could still be in the mix, but I think there should be no way that's allowed to happen. But crazier things have happened with the Yankees, of course. I think any of Luke Weaver, Mark Leiter Jr., Jake Cousins, Tommy Canley, maybe even Luis Gil could be in this mix.
All right, but let's be real here. Clay Holmes is better than all of those dudes.
Nah, he stinks, dude.
He doesn't.
No,
I understand. We went through this, but Clay Holmes is better than Luke Weaver. Get out of here with that.
Jake Cousins has a better, I looked at this earlier, K- walk rate and Sierra than Clay Holmes this season. So
in 33 innings.
I'm just saying. I was trying to look for a dark horse candidate here, and
there's nothing. I mean, I think Chris is right. Clay Holmes wouldn't be closing for most teams in the majors, but that doesn't mean that the Yankees have an upgrade from Clay Holmes hidden somewhere in their bullpen.
That part I do agree with. I don't really know where they go from here, and I said that exact thing yesterday. It's just, he leads the league in blown saves. It is what it is. I mean, that is a factual statement.
It's a move they had to make. I don't think that they are they will probably blow fewer saves moving forward, just because the amount of saves that Clay Holmes has blown relative to his actual talent level and runs allowed is outrageous. But I'd be surprised if there was just one guy here. I still think their best bet would be Gil if they wanted to go that route. I just have no idea if they want to go that route.
It is a possibility. There was a tweet from Jack Curry, who covers the Yankees for Yes Network. Quote, when Boone was asked if Luis Gil or Clark Schmidt could be a late inning bullpen option, he said, "Never say never." Boone said one starter will need to go to the pen when everyone is back.
And that's got to be heel, right? Like, given
It makes too much sense.
yeah, I understand not wanting to disrupt what's been a fantastic season, but it just, if it were me making the decision, it would be, I would be trying to get Luis Heel in that role.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you probably can't pick up Heel. So if there is one Yankees reliever to pick up, I'm trying to see who's been the 8th inning guy. It looks like Tommy Kahnle, right?
Yeah.
They've mixed and matched. They've used Luke Weaver in that role a lot this season too.
Yeah, but more 7th inning recently. Like it probably won't be just one guy, but if you have to speculate on one guy, maybe Kahnle. But
yeah, in deeper leagues,
don't say that with a lot of enthusiasm.
In deeper leagues, I would add Jake Cousins. I think the numbers are pretty good there for him. What do you guys do with Clay Holmes if you have him?
I would hang on to him in 12-team or deeper roto, but I think I would be willing to drop him anywhere else.
It's the same as Bednar and Sewald and Kimbrel. I mean, I'd probably roster Holmes over Sewald and Kimbrel at this point. Well, definitely Kimbrel. I don't know about Sewald. I mean, Justin Martinez is not looking good.
All right, let's talk about Justin Steele, who was placed in the IL with left elbow tendonitis, which will more than likely end his season. Royce Lewis made his first ever start at second base on Wednesday. Jose Miranda started at third with Carlos Santana at first. Grayson Rodriguez threw a bullpen session on Wednesday, his first time throwing off a mound since he was diagnosed with a strained lat about a month ago. Kodai Senga threw a 25-pitch bullpen session on Wednesday, and there has been some talk that he could return the season as a reliever. That's not what they're planning to use him as, in the future. It's just he doesn't have enough time to get built up. So that's a way that Senga could still contribute, is potentially as a reliever this season. Jorge Lopez was placed in the IL with a right groin strain, which further ensures Porter Hodge as the top saves option for the Cubs. And
he saved the no-hitter.
Yeah, he pitched the 9th inning of the no-hitter there. So, that was a good call by you, Scott. You ranked a bunch of relievers yesterday, and you had Porter Hodge very high on that list. You didn't know there was going to be an injury involved here, but,
It's nice to have the clarity.
Yep. Heston Kjerstad has cleared concussion protocol and is ramping up activities. Ryan Weathers tossed 3 scoreless innings in his first rehab start at Single A on Tuesday, and Paul Blackburn will rejoin the Mets rotation early next week in Toronto. Start, sit, or drop. We already spoke about Spencer Arrighetti. Bowden Francis looked a little bit more human, still managed a quality start here up against the Phillies. He still had 16 whiffs on 89 pitches. Overall, a good start. He did allow some hard contact here. I don't think we're dropping him. So it's more of like a starter sit question for next week up against the Mets. How do you guys feel about Bowden Francis for next week?
I would have to start Bowden Francis at this point.
Who did you say the matchup was?
Home against the Mets.
So that, I think, is going to be the last questionable one, because his matchups thereafter, I believe he'll line up for 2 starts. Let me see if I'm right about this. Yeah, I think his final 3 starts will be Texas and Tampa Bay in the same week, the second to last week, and then the final start will be Miami. So if he can get through that Mets start okay, then he should be smooth sailing after that. This Bowden Francis we're talking about. And I'd probably still start him against the Mets. I mean, this was bad by the standards of he gave up as many hits as his previous 4 starts combined. But when that number's 6, it was still a pretty good start for Bowden Francis.
Yep. What about you, Darvish, who made his long-awaited return, his first start since May 29th? He was not very good up against the Tigers, 2 2/3 innings, 4 hits, 3 runs, 4 strikeouts. He did get whiffs. He leaned on the slider. The slider was great. Only threw 59% of his pitches for strikes. But now that he's off the IL, you might have to make a decision in your league. Do I keep this guy on my bench? Do I just drop him? He does get the Mariners next week, so it's a good matchup. What do you guys think? Start, sit, or drop? You, Darvish.
Sit. I'm probably not dropping him, but I'm certainly not starting him. So sit is the other alternative. His velocity was mostly fine. Look, I mean, it's
the Mariners.
It's the Mariners, but it was only 63 pitches, and it was the Tigers this time.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
the Tigers aren't the
Tigers-
Mariners, but they're a pretty good matchup.
Yeah, they've become kind of a mid-tier offense, but and it was Darvish's first start back, and the velocity was fine, as you said. And it's the Mariners, so like I'm not saying you have to start you Darvish against the Mariners, but if his roster rate remains below 80%, he's almost certainly going to be in my sleeper pitchers for next week because
You know what? Tell Jansen Junk that it's the Mariners.
that guy throws junk. What are you talking about?
Did he pitch today? Did he get rocked?
All three of the pitchers for the A's gave up four runs or more.
Mm.
And only 6 strikeouts, which I'm just going to say is a season low for the Mariners.
It might be.
I believe so next week it's Seattle for Darvish, and I believe it would be the White Sox the following week.
Pretty good.
Even if you don't want to start him against the Mariners, if it goes well, you'll absolutely want to start him against the White Sox.
Yeah.
Hold Hugh Darvish.
For sure.
Pretty sure both of these names are just okay to drop, but I'll ask anyway. Albert Suarez, I mean, that's baseball, Susan. His last couple starts were great, and then he gets the White Sox, and he gives up 6 earned runs.
Yeah, and the difference is I think Spencer Arrighetti is good. I never really thought Albert Suarez was good, or at least it's been a long time since I thought he was good, and I understand he had looked good recently since rejoining the rotation. 5 starts, he had a 1.19 ERA, but I didn't actually think he was good. And so, okay, you roll the dice against the White Sox because it was the White Sox, but I think this is confirmation that Albert Suarez isn't actually good, and yeah, you can move on.
By the way, just a memo to all the haters out there. The Mariners have had 7 games with fewer than 6 strikeouts this season. So there you go.
Take that, Chris.
It's the lowest mark in baseball.
What about Bobby Miller, who will always have that start, I think, 2 turns ago where he looked pretty good. And then at the Angels here, 7 earned runs, 3 homers allowed. He's still 55% rostered. I think that's an easy drop, right?
I would agree. I was holding out hope, the faintest hope, that so 2 starts ago he went back to featuring his secondary arsenal heavily, through the fastball just 31% of the time. And oh, look, maybe Bobby Miller's back. Last start, fastball was back up to 49%. What are you doing, Bobby Miller? Well, this start, the fastball was only 25%. So he did mix in all the secondaries, which was the key to his success last year, I think. It didn't matter. He still got knocked around by the Angels. So, yeah, we can move on from Bobby Miller.
Clearly out of the glob,
Yeah.
but not in the good way.
Go ahead.
So you're saying there is a glob now, Chris?
I think the glob is squarely back. Yeah.
There's nothing fair about a glob.
Okay, as the nation's foremost expert in globology, you two are just,
So you're saying
couple pupils.
You're going to look me and America in the eye and say Carlos Rodon is not in a glob.
I don't think he's in a glob. No, he's been very consistent recently. Let's think about what the glob is. The glob is this indistinguishable mass of pitchers, or it was, I should say, this indistinguishable mass of pitchers after the true reliable aces. I see delineations after the aces. There are tiers beyond the ace tier. I would put Arrighetti in a higher tier than Nick Pivetta, for instance, when I was having trouble distinguishing between that range of starting pitchers last year, which is how I came to know them as the glob. So there may be some pitching phenomena going on now, but I don't think it's a glob, unless you disagree, unless you think it is just one indistinguishable mass.
I think we just have a different definition of the glob then.
Well, maybe I didn't do a good enough job.
Because for me, it's more, I think there are like 20 something pitchers I feel that I can trust. And then after that, it's just a bunch of dudes who they could have 3 good starts in a row and then completely wreck your ratios and undo all of that. And I feel like there's like 50 of those guys.
I mean, George Kirby just did that a few starts ago.
Yeah, but George Kirby has done that like twice this year. Carlos Rodon has done it like 7 times.
He's done it 7 times.
I think there's a clear distinction between what George Kirby has done to your ratios and what Carlos Rodon has done to your ratios.
I mean, if you want to say there are a handful of volatile pitchers, sure.
I think they're all volatile, is my point.
It kind of feels more that way since offense has been up.
Yeah, I think it's since like June.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if offense goes up, some pitchers are going to suffer, but like,
it feels like a lot of pitchers have suffered.
Well, Jack Flaherty's outside all of our top 25, I would assume, at least our top 20 rest of season, and does he feel like he's in this glob?
He kind of feels like a midpoint.
He hasn't had the blow up starts necessarily, but he also hasn't had like huge starts. So I think he could go either way fairly easily without much change.
I don't know. I don't want to dilute the glob by claiming there's a glob every year. I don't think there's a glob this year. I think, it just the nature of baseball, you're going to see some random bad starts from good pitchers from time to time, but that you can still distinguish them as good pitchers. Yeah. It's not, again, this.
I think you and I just disagree on Carlos Rodon, I guess.
Maybe. I mean, look, what were the numbers? I wasn't on yesterday's show.
He's having a really good second half. It's like a low 3s ERA and last K per 9 or something like that.
Last 8 starts for Carlos Rodon: 3.18 ERA, 108 WHIP, 11.9 K per 9.
It's really good.
Yeah, that's nice for him.
For him,
I don't trust it.
That's basically what
I don't trust it.
I can't think of his name. The Cubs pitcher. That's basically his numbers on the year.
It kind of feels like semantics here because I kind of agree with Chris. It feels like from SP 30 to 70, they're not like really all that different, and there is a lot of volatility involved with those pitchers. But maybe it's not the same glob as it was last year. So, Chris, if you want to take on a homework assignment and come up with your own new version of the glob, or
maybe I wrote about it for tomorrow's newsletter, but I'm gonna have to scrap that whole thing.
I'm gonna scrap it. The glob is
I'm gonna be up until 6 in the morning, 2 days in a row now.
Justin Mason made the mistake of not trademarking it, but not me.
There he is, Scott White, the man who made the glob, or
not really. It's
not really made
Scott
it.
White, Scott White,
not really
copyright troll.
Yeah. Anywho, let's take our final break, and when we return, we'll get back into baseball. We'll do that right after this.
My first hot take of the year. When Sunday football isn't enough.
Dislike that take.
Great take.
That other pregame show will put you over the top.
I'm all in. Let's go viral here.
Every Sunday, all the insight you need on CBS Sports Network.
Welcome back in. Let's get into the waiver wire options from Wednesday's action. And for the pitchers, MacKenzie Gore was very clearly the best one available here. Some names that could be out there in deeper leagues. Do any of these matter? Griffin Canning pitched well against the Dodgers, 6 2/3 innings, 1 run, 7 strikeouts, 18 whiffs on 98 pitches. Valente Belloso turned in a strong start up against the Nationals, 6 shutout innings, only 1 strikeout there. And Jonathan Cannon pitched well at the Orioles, 5 2/3, 1 run, 4 strikeouts. If we are trying to project matchups for next week, Cannon gets the Guardians, Belloso gets the Pirates and Nationals, and Canning is at the Twins. Do any of these matter in deeper leagues?
I'm gonna say no, not really. I mean, it was a great start for Canning. He's had flashes in the past, but I'm not gonna look at one random good start in September, even against the Dodgers, and say, yes, Griffin Canning is somebody we should care about.
Agreed.
All right, let's get into the waiver wire hitters here, and starting with the outfielders. Taylor Ward, the guy's he's hot. He's hot once again, 3 for 4 with his 21st home run. Last 38 games. This has gone on for quite some time now. 293 batting average, 7 homers, 20 RBI, and OPS over 800 during that time. He's 62% rostered. Jesse Winker is looking to pick things back up. 1 for 3 with a grand slam. Over his last 7 games, he's batting .391, 2 homers, and 7 RBI. And Brandon Marsh has quietly had a solid season. 3 for 3 in this one. Last 15 games, 326 batting average, 3 homers, 2 steals. Very bad against lefties, does not play against them. Brandon Marsh, he kind of defies all analytics. He strikes out 33% of the time. His zone contact is great. He doesn't swing and miss, and he doesn't chase pitches. I don't know how he has a 33% strikeout rate. It's very weird.
I'm going to guess he just doesn't swing at all.
Yeah, like maybe he's
that's the biggest problem.
Too passive, and then, just gets 2 strikes.
Yeah, I would guess he gets 2 deep into counts too often, and that's the biggest issue.
How would you guys rank Taylor Ward, Jesse Winker, and Brandon Marsh?
Just like that, Ward, Winker, and Marsh. Yep. And Ward is actually on the list of players to pick up for the final 3 weeks. He has had this uncanny quality where he tends to be very hot at the start of the season and very hot at the end of the season and does a whole lot of nothing in the middle. Yeah. And it seems to be playing out again. I mean, 4 home runs in his last 5 games. That's not something we normally see from Taylor Ward, except when he's going through one of those stretches. And I like the Angels matchups overall to close out the season. So I'm feeling pretty dumb for dropping him in the Scott White Dynasty League, which is a 24-teamer. But I think some leagues much shallower than that. Ward makes for not a bad streaming option.
He is going to have one of the least impactful 25 homer seasons in fantasy baseball history, though, because he's only got 59 runs and 62 RBI in 132 games, which is less than 1 combined per game. And even in this hot stretch, he has 36 combined in 38 games. So, yeah, which is weird because the top of that lineup is actually decent. At least with guys who can get on base, but I'm not sure what's going on there.
He bets toward the top of that lineup, doesn't he?
I think he's been hitting leadoff for them.
That would explain it then.
Yeah. Would you guys take Taylor Ward over Pete Crow Armstrong or Dylan Cruz?
No.
Would you take him over JJ Bleday? They seem like similar players.
Yeah, I have a slight preference for Bleday, but only a slight one.
I think I have a slight preference for Ward, but only a slight one.
I will break the tie, and I will go with JJ Bleday. Which corner infielder do you like better between these two? Carlos Santana has quietly had a very solid season. 1 for 3 with 2 walks and his 20th home run. He's homered in back-to-back games. And Matt Vierling had a big game here on Wednesday night. I believe it was 2 hits, a sock and a shoe for Vierling. He's been good for quite some time as well. Who do you like more? I guess you could say neither. If you don't like these guys, Santana or Matt Vierling?
I mean, Santana, so he has a home run in back-to-back games. But prior to that, Carlos Santana had hit 204 since July 1st. So when most of the league was hot, heating up at the plate, Santana was ice cold. And look, the Twins have pretty good matchups to close out the season. I just think the priority for Santana is pretty low.
Yeah,
I prefer him to Vierling, but I don't think
fair.
saying much.
Yeah, I prefer Ward to both.
Would you take Santana over any of Torkelson, Noel, or Manzardo? Those feel like the corner infielders we talked about recently.
Maybe over Noel, just because it seems like playing time is a bigger issue for him. But
has it been steady recently? It was looking steady. Has that changed?
That was the one thing I wasn't sure how Manzardo's addition was impacting Noel.
Noel sat out the past 2 games.
Oh, okay, that's.
And he started a lot before that, yeah.
But Manzardo's only been there for 3 games.
Yeah, those could very clearly be correlated.
Yeah, and so that's my concern.
And the other thing is I don't know that I have much confidence at all in Manzardo at this point. He's obviously been more productive since returning, but that doesn't mean I'm totally won over to his fantasy utility.
I would probably rank them Torkelson, Manzardo, Santana, Noel, Vierling.
Yeah, I think if you need someone to play right now, I'd probably put Torkelson at the top and then Santana. But if you just need a super upside, I think Manzardo's fine.
Yeah, I think Torkelson's clearly the top.
Torkelson's clearly one. Yep.
One name in deeper 5 outfielder leagues, Tommy Pham has had an up and down season, but he now finds himself leading off for the Royals. Pretty good offense, although there's no more Vinny Pasquantino, unfortunately. 2 for 4 with his 8th home run here. He's led off 4 games in a row for the Royals, 16% rostered. So again, deeper 5 outfielder leagues, you're just looking to get some at bats, maybe a little bit of power and speed. I think Tommy Pham is a fine option.
I like him better than Brandon Marsh.
Sure.
Okay. Let's talk about Zac Gallen, who threw those 6 no-hit innings, and then he was pulled due to his pitch count. He got up to 100 pitches, but he threw those 6 no-hit innings, 4 walks, 8 strikeouts, 13 whiffs on 100 pitches. He did throw more curveballs and changeups in this one, and both were good. And I think that's a good sign for him because really the biggest problems for Gallen this year, those are his 2 best pitches last season. Both of them have just regressed.
Mm-hmm.
They have not been as good. The whiff rates are down on both. The quality of contact is a little bit worse on each of those pitches as well. The walks have been a problem for it. Just all around, it's been a down season here for Zac Gallen. But this is probably the best we've seen him in a while, I would say.
Yeah, I can't really argue with that. I will point out that he still walked 4, and in 13 starts since returning from the IL, has 4.2 walks per 9, which is a problem.
Yep.
But yeah, if the curveball and changeup, if this was a sign of a turnaround for those 2 pitches, it's going to mean better days ahead for Zac Gallen. And I still have him as a top 20 pitcher rest of season. So hopefully he builds off this.
All right, let's get into some of the leftovers and some pitchers who had great starts here on Wednesday. Christopher Sanchez at the Blue Jays, 7 innings, 2 runs, 7 strikeouts. Seth Lugo was great up against the Guardians, 7 innings, 1 run, 4 strikeouts. He has delivered a 7-inning quality start in 3 of his last 4 outings. Sonny Gray was awesome at the Brewers, 7 innings, 1 run, 7 strikeouts there. Last 2 starts have been very good for Sonny Gray. Nathan Eovaldi turned in a strong outing up against the Yankees, 7 innings, 2 runs, 6 strikeouts. And George Kirby bounced back a quality start at the A's, 6 innings, 2 runs, 9 strikeouts for him. Chris, anything that stood out here for Kirby, Eovaldi, Sonny Gray, Seth Lugo, and Christopher Sanchez?
I think, Sanchez has had his ups and downs this season, but I think overall, he's about as what you see is what you get as any pitcher in baseball. Like his 47 season long ERA, 3.45, 126 whip. Like, I think that's probably just what Christopher Sanchez is. And it's a solid pitcher. And I don't, there have been those ups and downs, but I don't know how much I care about the peaks and valleys. I think that is what he is. Whereas like Seth Lugo, I've been pretty skeptical of for most of the season. And, lately that has looked pretty good, but there have still been very good starts in there, including the last 2. I think the ups and downs are also just part of it with Seth Lugo, but that's probably more of he's a mediocre pitcher and, more like a 4 ERA guy, which is basically what he's been since the start of July. So yeah, that's where I'm at on Lugo.
It's been frustrating, just the experience of having Sanchez, though. Maybe it's because I only have him in head-to-head leagues.
That's exactly what I was thinking, yeah.
And so I just always I regain faith in him, and then he gives me a bunch of crummy starts, and so I lose faith in him, and that's when he throws the 7-inning gems, and he's not good enough consistently enough to just remain a fixture in the lineup. So I'm having to play this streaming game with him, and it's so annoying. He's been the most frustrating pitcher this year, I think.
Mm-hmm. Some hitting leftovers. Kyle Schwarber stayed hot, 2 for 3 with his 32nd home run. Last 2 games, he's got 7 hits, 4 homers, 5 runs, 7 RBI. It was also his 13th leadoff home run of the season, which ties an MLB record previously held by Alfonso Soriano. Well, I guess he still holds it unless Kyle Schwarber breaks it. Gunnar Henderson looks locked in once again, 3 for 4 with his 35th home run over his last 4 games. He's got 2 homers and 2 steals. Cedric Mullins has been hitting well last 24 games, batting .297 with 3 home runs, 7 steals, and OPS over .850. Elly De La Cruz, a solid game in that rout of the Astros, 3 for 4 with 3 runs, 2 RBI, and his 62nd steal. Juan Soto, 3 for 3 with a walk and his 38th home run. And Wyatt Langford very clearly heard me say that he was droppable, and he's making me eat my words because he's turned it up lately. 3 for 4 with a double, a walk, 3 runs, 2 RBI. Dominated the Yankees in that series. Last 18 games, .308 batting average, 4 homers, 18 RBI, 1 steal here for Wyatt Langford. Anything to add here? Some pretty interesting performances. Langford, Soto, Elly, Mullins, Gunnar Henderson, and Kyle Schwarber.
Maybe I was on to something by continuing to rank Wyatt Langford ahead of Dylan Cruz. Except I didn't because you guys bullied me out of it.
The lesson here,
Whatever.
Scott, don't fall for the bullies.
It's
Appeasement never works. We're just going
It's-
to keep bullying you.
yeah, okay, fair enough. It's a coin flip who's better the rest of the way, and I had them probably 3 spots apart the one way, and now they're like 3 spots apart the other way, so they're essentially the same, I think, in terms of talent and likelihood of contributing positively for your fantasy team the rest of the way.
The one thing with both is they're both batting at the top of the order now. Langford has been hitting second the last couple of games at least, right? Yeah, the last 2 games, and with Seager out, I would think that's going to continue down the stretch. So that helps Wyatt Langford close whatever gap Cruz has had as a, is he batting leadoff for the Nationals?
I think he has, yeah.
Yeah, so that closes that gap. I will say this has nothing to do with fantasy baseball. It's just the way my brain works. For some reason, when I thought about Dylan Cruz, I never thought that Cruz and Cruz are all the same name. Like, for some reason in my head, I never said it the same, like O'Neal Cruz and Dylan Cruz. Like, we had the confusion earlier on in the podcast about that. It's only now that I'm realizing, oh yeah, that is
Only now.
That is what is it? Not an antonym. I don't know. It's some kind of nym.
Homophone.
A homophone. Yeah. That's all. Nothing.
Yeah.
You don't need to respond.
I think we need to be maybe a little bit more clear moving forward with first names, and it's Cruz, like a crew neck shirt type thing, and obviously it's hard to pick up over audio.
And you have Tom Cruise, so if he ever comes up, that just makes it even more confusing.
Right, that's a completely different spelling.
Yeah.
And what's crazy is when I was describing Dylan Cruz's name earlier, I would say it's like you have multiple groups of people who are manning a cruise, but then I realized that would be confusing because we're throwing an extra kind of cruise.
Well,
in
and
there.
that would be cruises.
Right, the cruises. You
would have
all the different crews for the different
you would
cruises.
have the crew of a cruise.
Yeah, right, right. By the way, I got a bonus news item here. Matt Chapman and the Giants have agreed to a 6-year, $151 million extension.
Wow.
So that's
a change right there.
Takes out the 2 years that were remaining on his current deal. So it's not like on top of the remaining years.
True. Yeah.
It's
Did he have some kind of opt out or something?
I think he had an opt out each of the next 3 years with like a $5 million buyout or something.
It's gone so well with him with the Giants that I think we're all happy to hear that.
Yeah, it's been a great season for Chapman. 247 batting average, 22 homers, 90 runs scored, 13 steals, and a 778 OPS. It's so interesting that everyone else's steals on the Giants have come down this year, except for Matt Chapman. Very weird.
He's just had a weird season because it's also like the 90 runs, he's batting almost exclusively 4th and 5th, and yet he's scoring way more runs than he's driving in. It's all weird. Everything about Matt Chapman's production so far has been weird, but it's been a terrific bounce back season. The defense has been excellent. And I'm really happy to see it. He's long been one of my favorite players.
Yep. All right, good for Matt Chapman there. Yes, 6 years, $151 million, staying with the Giants. Some bullpen updates for the Phillies. Carlos Estevez walked 1 but struck out 2 for his 24th save. Jeff Hoffman worked a perfect 8th inning in that game. For the Marlins, Calvin Fauché entered with the bases loaded, no outs in the 8th inning, a 2-run lead. He gave up a walk and a double. He let 3 runs in. He took his second blown save. For the Braves, Raisel Iglesias walked 1 but struck out 2 for his 30th save. For the Royals, Lucas Erceg back in the 9th inning like nothing ever happened. He struck out 1, picked up his 9th save. I still think he's probably the most likely to get saves, I guess, moving forward, but it's been weird usage, I guess.
Yeah, well, yeah, and he had been struggling, obviously. So hopefully this gets him back on track. I had given some thought to picking up Hunter Harvey again in those very deep leagues where saves are scarce. He's currently still on the IL, but should be back soon. But I would still bet on Erceg being the guy rest of season.
For the Rangers, Kirby Yates entered with 2 outs in the 9th, a 4-run lead, 2 runners on. He got the final out for his 26th save. For the D-backs, Justin Martinez got the 9th inning with a 4-run lead. He gave up 2 runs on a walk and 2 hits. Has been giving up some runs lately, so that's a situation to watch. And for the Tigers, in extra innings, Jason Foley, I believe it was the bottom of the 10th inning. Yep, and he gave up a hit. The Manfred man came in to score, which was Jackson Merrill. And Jason Foley gets tagged with his 5th loss of the season. To stream or not to stream on Thursday. Go for it.
They walked Xander Bogart. Or no, they walked Luis Arias to get to Fernando Tatis. Like, I get that you want to have the force outs there, and Luis Arias hasn't struck out in like 96 plate appearances in a row or something. But Fernando Tatis is not a player I'd want to face in that situation. So didn't love that decision by the Padres there.
Definitely has
or the Diamondbacks.
Galaxy Tigers.
Jeez, yeah. Okay.
Definitely has some galaxy brain there, walking a rise to get to Fernando Tatis. To stream or not to stream on Thursday. All right, Cody Bradford up against the Angels. That one's pretty good. Martin Perez faces the Tigers. We have
I think those are the only 2 for me, yeah.
Yeah, Jake Irvin's been bad lately, but it's a good matchup at the Pirates. So
that's really not such a good matchup anymore. They're kind of like the Tigers. They've gained a lot of ground in the run scored standings.
All right, so I guess we'll go with Cody Bradford and Martin Perez on Thursday. On Friday, we get Frankie Montas, who faces the Rockies in Milwaukee. DJ Hers is at the Pirates. Luis Ortiz faces the Nationals. Shane Baz is at the Orioles. Zebby Matthews at the Royals, but got destroyed his last time out. And Matthew Boyd has been pitching well, but he's at the Dodgers.
Yeah, I could see Ortiz being okay. I could see DJ Hers being okay. I could see Frankie Montas being okay. I'm not particularly excited about any of these guys. And there's no way you can start Samuel Aldeguerri after Spencer Arrighetti just got destroyed. Because their names sound similar.
I was like, where's he go with that? I think
Montas, let me make my dumb jokes, you know?
But sometimes they're not dumb jokes. Sometimes they're so smart they just go over my head, and I have no idea what's going on.
That almost never happens.
I think Montas against the Rockies is probably my favorite, and then DJ Hers at the Pirates.
Yeah, damning with faint praise, but I agree.
Sure.
Scott will choose not to answer to stream or not to stream. We are going to wrap there for Scott and Chris. I am Frank. Thanks as always for tuning in to Fantasy Baseball today. Please make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify, especially the cats while they're eating. And we will be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.